All right. Welcome back. This is the time now. It's the time. This is the place. Welcome back to Us versus Life. And if you are listening or if you ever comment, the first thing I'm going to do is just give you my email address, our email address here, to try to help. That's the whole point of this, is just trying to help. So I just want to state that. So if you're listening, just reach out and put it in the comments or whatever you want to say. Again, try to keep it positive. If you have something negative to say, not saying that anyone has done that, but if you do have anything negative to say, just go and look for my or our direct contact and send that there. But if you have something positive to share with everyone, then put that in the comments, right? So I don't know if anyone's gonna say, "Oh, you're just trying to only have a certain type of comments." Yes, 100%, because I think there's enough negativity, right? I've talked about this a little bit in some of my other videos, shared in the world. So if you want to share some negativity, you can give it direct to us. We'll take that, we'll review that, and we will get back to you. But we only want to share positivity with each other. At least that's what I think is a good thing to do. I don't know. Is someone out there going to tell me that we should share negativity with each other? I don't know. Well, anyway, so I said that, let's kind of recap. Um, I started off at the beginning with the first video on this channel, and I talked about how I believe life kind of started a little bit, right? Then I kind of built from there and started talking about other things. So I left off on value, asking the question of if you think you matter and what do you value, outside of yourself. That's what I was asking. And now I think it's okay, and there's a lot of other things we'll get into, as I've always said. We'll get into relationships on this video, I think. And I'll come back with another one. Again, we're going to talk about many things. Let's talk about, again, I don't edit. Let's talk about relationships, because I think the first thing I would say, as my opinion, and again, as I've said before, my opinion is always based on evidence, right? So when I say my opinion, it's not just something I came up with myself, it's what I observed from multiple people in various ways. And that's easy to do. If anyone is wondering, that's very easy to do with the internet. You can get insight on many opinions. I can start naming specifics. Uh, you can go on forums, places where people post their opinion about certain topics. Social media is certainly good for that. Anyway, you can go to a lot of places. You could, if you have a job, you could do it at work. Because what happens is there's a mathematical ways, or I should say methodologies, that prove that once you have a certain number of something as a base, then you can take that and multiply it out to a certain number. Okay? Again, once you have a certain number of something, you can take that and multiply it out to a certain number. That's not, new information. It's not something I came up with. That's just a fact, you know. um, I've talked about that, I think, in some of my other videos, in case anybody was wondering about that. So, not saying I'm getting 100% of the world, because you'll never get 100% of anything, right? But when I get a number, when we get a number over here at Us versus Life, then we know we have a representation of a certain point of view. It's kind of like, a scientist or just doing any form of analytics. You have a trend, as they say. Okay? If anyone's got any questions about that, just put it in the comments and we can talk further about that. Again, the email address to contact Us versus Life. We'll continue to share, but if you comment and it's necessary, I will make sure you get that. So anyway, talking about relationships, and one of the key factors, I'm jumping straight to the point. If you wanted to, you could turn off the video after I say this one thing. If you don't understand how to value other people, then you won't have a good relationship. It's very simple. If you can't value someone else or even something else properly, then you won't have a good relationship. I don't know. Maybe it is my opinion, right? I say it's my opinion because everybody has their own opinion. So I don't want anyone trying to, or not trying, anyone thinking that I'm telling them what to do, right? But again, when you say this is what you want to do, what's your evidence based on? My evidence, as I've said, is based on study of multiple people and situations. All right, not just mine. I get a perspective, right? And I keep building that perspective. Do I have a perspective of every single person in the world? No. Do I have a certain number? Yes. And then I say this based off of that. So, value, understand it, know what it is, understand that if you only value what you value, which, let me say this better, if you only value yourself and nothing else, that's okay. But I've talked about levels. There's levels to being correct. Okay? So, do you think that's the best level you could be at? If you say, I only value myself and what I think and what I feel, and everybody else, I don't value, everything else, I don't value. That's why I talked about value first before relationships. Because you can't be in a proper relationship based on the evidence I've seen if you don't have a proper approach to valuing those things outside of yourself and people outside of yourself. So we'll throw communication in there. How do you properly communicate? If your version of proper communication is to say, listen to me in everything that I'm saying, and I don't need to hear anything you have to say, you should probably reevaluate that. Let's see. Why? Why is that true? Someone may ask. Because if you're one sided in your approach and your understanding, then what is the range of your perspective? It's only scoped. It's isolated to just you. So basically, what you're trying to project to whoever you would communicate with is that everything revolves around me. Okay? So again, I think it's best based off of what I've gathered. It's still evolving. This is my opinion based off of evidence, as I've said, is that things work best is if I understand your position first and you understand my position, and then we talk. This communication. This is also how you get a level of value for each other. When you properly understand what someone else is thinking and what you're thinking, and you compare and contrast the two. So we're talking about relationships. So that's how you can build a proper foundation for a relationship. Again, in my opinion. Okay? What's your opinion? Put it in comments or whatever. You think you can build a proper relationship without understanding someone else's point of view and respecting that? Some people call this compassion. Some people call it empathy. And there's a lot of names for it, and all those things are a part of it, right? Because if someone only looks, again, one sided at something, then how can they build a proper relationship with someone else if they only looking at something from their own point of view? And so then we look at relationships um, as they appear to be happening these days. Again, based off evidence, perspective of other people, there seems to be a disconnect in the understanding between two people. So, what type of relationships are we talking about? We're talking about any relationship, whether it's your friend, whether it's your wife or girlfriend or your fiance or whatever title you want to use, you still have a relationship. Your family, your enemies, for those of you that use those labels, and there's no judgment there. But whatever relationship you have, whether it's with your own self or anything, anything. I don't want to go too far, but I kind of touched on it in what about value when we're talking about value. You have a relationship to that you have a value estimate on, whether that's no value or the highest value. You have a relationship with that, whether that's a living thing or an inanimate thing, a non living thing, for example. You have a relationship with it, right? Not saying you communicate with it, but you have a relationship with it because communication, that base, your understanding of that it comes before you have a relationship with it. Because if you don't understand what something is, how can you build a proper relationship? So, what is the point that I'm suggesting? Understand what you're dealing with before you build a proper relationship, whether that's a friend, a family member, yourself, or whatever. You got to have an understanding in order to communicate and then get to a relationship. I'm not the first person to say this, but maybe I'm one of the first people to say it in this way. Because people have often said communication is key when it comes to relationships. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we just kind of heard that and glanced over, or maybe we didn't. Maybe we understood it fully. If you understand clearly how to communicate with someone, whether you agree with them or not, put it in the comments so you can help other people. And if you don't, put that in the comments so you can help other people. Because both have value. All right? So when we understand that communication is important and how to communicate in its very basic way is to just to understand someone else's uh, thought process first, or at some point understand it, whether it's first or not, and then relay your own. That person does the same for you, and then you got a good situation. You have a relationship at that point. You have a two-way communication, and then you have a good relationship. It's really as simple as that. This could be one of my shortest videos if I decided, but we could talk about something else around relationships. So, and it's all related. So we could talk about conditions. On what condition do you terminate your relationship with someone else? There's a lot of details that we could talk about, but we're just sticking to the prominent things, the big things. Let's say it in that way. So, is your relationships with people conditional? And do you feel that's the right way to do it? Again, there's levels. At what level does a situation reach that you say you have exceeded my conditions? And do you feel that your threshold, meaning the limit that you have for when you terminate a relationship, is adequate? Based on what? Again, based on what? What are you basing that on? It's a question. It's a question for me, it's a question for all of us. So then we start saying that what if you have an unconditional relationship? Now this is like an ideal to strive for. Maybe someone would say this doesn't exist. It's not real. I would be careful with that because I feel like if you get to a certain point, if your threshold is high enough, then everybody will recognize that that threshold is good enough for anybody to operate within. So when it's reached, no no person will question it except for those that are way out of bounds in their thinking. You see. Now, if your threshold is so low, I'll give you an example. If someone says, "Oh, I asked my friend for $5, and my friend said no, and we're not friends anymore," I think a lot of people will say, "Well, that's not. I don't know if you stop being friends with someone because you asked for $5." Now, someone will say, "Well, what's the context of that ask?" Right? So I'm just keeping it simple. Just go with that for a moment. Is it worth losing a friend over $5? This is what I'm talking about. Now, if someone said, "Hey, I lost my friend over $5 million," I think a lot of more people be like, "$5 million? That's a lot of money." What happened? They didn't pay you back. They had $5 million to give. What was the situation there? That's what I'm talking about. So be aware of the levels as you deal with people. You know, and if you find that your judgment isn't adequate to make that assessment, then just take a step back. I would say, in my opinion, and just reassess it with someone else, or just don't do anything at all. Sometimes no action is better than taking an action, especially if it's going to be an error. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of patience. Okay? So, again, we're talking about relationships and how we should deal with each other. In the prior video, we talked about value and do you matter and stuff like that. But if you start to connect the dots and put this together, you can kind of see how we're starting to build, right? Because in the next video, if you understand how relationships should be valued and should work, then maybe we can start talking about more, because we talked about happiness as well. So maybe then you go from there: happiness, value, relationships, because these things are going to all happen in your life whether you want them to or not. Then we can get more into purpose, which are a part of those things, right? Because if you listen to the things that I was saying before, it was like, yeah, I kind of was like, I talked about the purpose a little bit, but if we take it step by step, and you start to get these things um, what's the best way to say it? As best as you can, you start to understand these things in the highest level that you can. Then you can get into purpose. And we'll skip ahead right now to purpose. So if you understand those things, you'll say, well, what is my purpose? Right? So if I understand that I have to do this and that and X, Y, and Z to be happy, I have to do this and that and X, Y, and Z to have a good relationship and understand value and understand my history, which was the very first video, right? Then maybe the purpose will become more clear. Not based on how much money I have or you have or what relationships you have and all these lesser things, but just based on the top level of these things in summary, and then we can probably see our purpose a little better, right? Because if you're basing your purpose off of the wrong things, then you'll feel like you have no purpose. Okay? Let me say this again. If any of us base our decision making, our process to get to what is my purpose off the wrong things, then we may find we don't have a purpose. But if you base it off the proper things, then we may see our purpose more clearly. Because your purpose can't be based off things that are not long lasting. Let's put it that way. This is a way for, I think, that we all can think about things. Like, okay, if my purpose is to do something short term that only serves me, right? This is why I said this before about purpose. Then you may say, I don't have a purpose. But if your purpose is to leave a legacy, right? It will last beyond yourself. Then you may start to respect what the purpose could be. Okay? And so then you say, well, what can I do? I don't have anything. I don't have any resources. That's not true. Everyone has something to offer, right? But what we have to do is get with like-minded people in when we're making our offer so that they will understand it. Because someone else will shoot you down because they don't see your value. But if someone recognizes your value, they will understand who you are and they will see what your purpose is, even if you don't see it. So, again, put all this together. This is how relationships work. Because relationships have a purpose, relationships have value. You can have a relationship, but you got to understand how to communicate. And you got to understand how to communicate by means of knowing how to understand someone else's perspective clearly as well as your own. Because, as well as your own. Because what we do, it seems, is that we only look at things from our own perspective and not understand what the other person is trying to say or what the other value is that we're assessing. We must do this. This is not optional. This is mandatory. It's required. If everybody does this for themselves and for others, then we will have a better situation to assess. So as you build your relationships, I would hope that we could start taking this approach, right? Because our relationships do need to be better. And our relationships have been good at times And you know, it's varied. Our relationships vary. But a lot of times they based on conditions. That's why I brought up conditions. It's like if the condition is I need you, then the relationship tends to go a certain way. But is it based on is it a falsity? Is it real or is it not? Or is it just because I need you? That's conditional. Relationships should be free and open. I don't need you for anything, but I value who you are, and therefore we can have a relationship. See, when you got a list of things you saying to someone, you must be these things for you to have value to me, and therefore have a relationship with me, then you're going to set yourself up for failure. This is why so many people spend their lives searching for relationships because they don't realize a relationship is a give and take situation. You don't get all of what you want, they don't get all of what they want. But the key is just understanding each other. So, what's the key? It's to find understanding, not someone seeking someone that meets all of their criteria, but seeking someone that understands that I want someone that can be open to understanding who I am as a person, who you are as a person. Whether you are in a good place in life or not, a person that respects you for who you are is someone you can have a relationship with if you can open up communication properly. That's value. They should value you for who you are. This is the conflict that happens. People don't value each other the way that they should oftentimes. They go, I can only value if you meet these certain conditions. What you want is an unconditional situation. Meaning I see you for who you are and I value you regardless of your conditions. All right? So that's what I got to say about relationships. You apply that to whatever relationship you want or don't reply. If you disagree, put it in the comments. I could say a lot more, but I'm not right now. We can leave it open for dialogue because that's communication. I'm always open for that. And we'll talk again next time. Remember, this is us versus life. All of us are here under the same circumstance, right? We got to remember that. So we're all just trying to figure it out and live and be happy, I would think. So we can't lose sight of that. And I want you guys, I want everyone out there to have a good relationship, whether that's a friend, a family, or a person you're in love with, romantically, whatever. A boss, a person you're meeting at a store, a person you're ordering your food from. Have good relationships. And it starts with being able to see things from the other person's perspective, then clearly communicating your own is a way to start that. All right? So, all right, let's get out of here. It's us versus life. See the details on the channel here. We got social media. We got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. We're still trying to build this out. We're going to try to help people build a community of helping people and bringing in some experts in certain topic areas. And we'll build this out hopefully. And once we get to that point, we'll just start helping each other and helping more people and more people. Help as many people as we can. And this will be a good thing. Anybody disagree with that? Put it in the comments. If you agree with that, put it in the comments. Help as many people as we can. If you disagree with that, put it in the comments. If you don't disagree with that, put that in the comments. Join the community. Subscribe, like, share.